Okay. Bob Carlock, I know, is not here. John Colleton. Joe Costigan, we know is not going to be here. Don DeDavalier. Mary Rose.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Sandy.
I'm here.
Savon.
I'm here.
Jay.
Yep.
Bob Cheese.
Yep.
Dave Stecklin.
Yeah.
Steve Stewart.
Yes.
Greg Sutton.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, this is Lisa and Tom, and Teresa's here.
Teresa's here as well and everything else. So
And Julio.
Julio. Let's not forget Julio. More
And
importantly,
Mark. And Mark.
Mark as
And
well.
Mark. Okay.
Well, I appreciate everybody taking the time today. It's been a snowy, blustery Chicago morning here, but we're going to try and make this, it's not going to be a long meeting. It's not going to be a lot of debate. Basically, we're going to, first of all, just kind of give the progress we have going on in the conversation we're having concerning the reauthorization and restoring the 15% set-aside funding to congressional members. Through the task force, basically, we're kind of an overview of the visits we did last year. Talk a little bit about the fiscal cliff, which we're also hearing concerns about too as well, and the reauthorization itself. So I think it still continues, but I think we laid a good foundation and groundwork to continue with the mission of the task force itself. Basically, that we'll take the minutes of the last meeting, we'll have them available for next time. Does everybody have see a copy of the agenda we have here today? And first of all, I just wanted to go through there. Basically, we're going to do a review of the priorities, the general themes and business perspective, update on in-legislative visits, legislative update, and then basically the basic housekeeping information too as well. So as you can see, it's kind of a light agenda. I kind of want to do this because, you know, we're done with the holidays, starting a new year. I think we should just refocus on exactly when we started this task force committee almost a year ago, and realize the efforts that we've had of the different partnerships we've had, working with IDS and the other departments as well, to make sure that we have a successful meeting with the legislators. And we've been very, very pleased with the efforts that we've had so far. We'll have some new ones coming up. But I think as we also talk about this is that we found out that we have to have a focus and a plan. So if we're talking about anything today is we're revisiting what the plan is and what our mission statement is. And we found out that we got to make sure that we come up with the specific training models that we have and make sure we keep the minds of what's the priorities of these efforts we're trying to make. And we should revisit the mission force of it. But I think it's important to note that we've had tremendous progress. We've all learned a lot from the different legislators we met with, the different people coming together with the partnerships. But we also, I think, reestablished some other efforts by taking it back to our last board meeting that we have a subcommittee to as well. And the subcommittee, we think that it's the meat of the crisis on how we address, from a legislative viewpoint, having those public-private partnerships and the success stories you have and the models. And I think we just have to make sure that we have all the models availability, but more importantly, the partners are all identified. And that's everybody from the community colleges to the trade associations to the unions and those type of individuals as well. But more importantly, how do we continue an ongoing effort to make sure they're part of the process? So often we get problems solved, and we go back to the efforts of what we've done before, and that get territorial. This is that guy's problem, this problem, and everything else and stuff. But we think the driving force is still the public-private partnership, and we want to continue this. So we know that the task force must take an active role to make the investments in training and education and target to meet the full range of the local industries, and all the stakeholders connected to those industries are engaged to ensure the greatest return. So that's basically what we're trying to do with all the partnerships we have. And that's, I think, the whole reason why we start up the committee itself, to make sure we had that. We all know the reauthorization hasn't been cured, but we advocate, for the success made by the public-private partnerships when we talk to the different legislators from Durban on down. Basically, it's about educating and training the workforce we have and how we address the flexibility. So, we're still back to the same points when we talked about Bob helped us develop the talking points we had, is to make sure that we have the flexibility to meet the local industry's needs. And once again, that comes right back to the public-private partnerships that we're developing as we go along with that. So I think that anybody have any questions so far, and questions of what the mission of the task force is, and that any new directives we talked about concerning that? Sure, LaVon.
Tom, we may come to this later, so if that's okay, just tell me. But I would like to talk a little bit when we get into that about upcoming visits, et cetera, about the role of community colleges, because I feel that there's been maybe a lack of engagement, so maybe I need to understand the purpose a little better. And I actually had done a little bit with some emails trying to figure out what I might be able to showcase from the colleges in that particular district that would help. So, you know, I've been looking at different things from the colleges.
Right.
So, is there a point to go into that a little bit more later?
I think that really gets into the public-private sector of it, because community colleges are definitely going to be an active participant in it. We're, you know, we just added another one to veterans. We're going to have them be in active involvement too. So it's critical partners we need to make sure this thing is a successful program. And yes, you're definitely going to be part of it, because it's not only part of the initiatives we have in Illinois, but more importantly on the federal legislation we see, the community colleges is an active role of what we're talking about. So we want to make sure they're the first part. But we still think, in turn, it's developing that partnership with the private side in order to make it a successful effort.
But I guess I was thinking a little bit, as you're making these visits, I'm not sure what the engagement has been, so maybe that's what I'm not understanding. Maybe that's not a particular role.
No, I just think that when we have like Mary Rose and some of the private sector members do, and we talk about training, it is obviously mostly to the community colleges. So you're mentioned, but you're right. We haven't, I don't think it's part of the meeting.
Some of the local community colleges have definitely been represented. I think having some more coordination to make sure that there's a consistency of the message from the community colleges would be a great addition. But we've had people from the community colleges come to downstate.
Right, absolutely.
Downstate meetings.
Okay, so we can talk about that a little bit later. Okay.
Just coordinate through you and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah,
that would.
We've asked Liz to do that, and well, you know, and I think I'm sure
Yeah,
you're able to send us what you want to.
Right. So that kind of depends on the role that.
Right.
Okay. So we can talk about that. I can probably.
And I think this is all just a work in motion, because I think that we identified that we had the mass task of being able to get the legislative reauthorization done on how we're going to do it. But more importantly, we have to have the core. We're developing the core. And that's what I'm trying to say is with the Public-Private Partnership Subcommittee, that's developing the core, which is going to be the key on how we address it from a legislative viewpoint. Bottom line, that's what it comes down to. We can't do the legislative as just a legislative task force. We've got to have something be the driving factor. And the driving factor we have is the public-private partnership we have. So that's why we're trying to get, they have to be the ones sitting at the table. I mean, quite honestly, Jay, you have to admit that they didn't really want to talk to us. They wanted to talk to the local employers and those individuals, the colleges and stuff like that, the veterans who's representing them and everything else and stuff. And right or wrong, that's what that's where it's driven from, and that's what they're wanting. And so we feel, and that's why we had the last board meeting, we get permission to do the subcommittee. And with the subcommittee, basically, we're going to have individuals like Don is going to be on board. John Cullerton is supposed to be coming here, and he's going to be actively involved. Greg Sutton. We're going to have community colleges. Luvana is going to serve on it as well. We have veterans. We have Jay. And who am I missing? We're actually seeking other partners too, because Bob and I have talked about it. And in our little task force meetings to the subcommittee, what's the other partners we need? And the thing about it is, as you know, we have the trade associations, the unions, and everyone else and stuff are also an active participant, you know, as well.
I think we're focused on just increasing the voice of the employer side.
I think that's exactly what we're looking
to
at.
make sure that they feel comfortable with this direction, and we can use their examples of how this could work.
And that's why we asked Liz Belcaster from the Teamsters to be involved, because they've got some excellent public-private partnership models.
Well, and I think the most important thing about what they're doing is they have people's gas, obviously, they have Teamsters, and I think we need to share more with that. It's with the partnership with community colleges, with IWIB, with veterans, and DCEO that made this happen. I mean, not all of us together work on this. I mean, we're doing the training with you know, it's college.
Which one are you talking about?
Gas. You guys recruited, Veterans Affairs helped us recruit.
It was right.
I was going to say right.
Because it wasn't right.
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 No,
Are you sure?
Yeah, Dawson.
Dawson Tech?
Yeah. Anyway, so that is a great example of, you know, of all of those state agencies, which is what Durban wants.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, he wants to know how we're blending our funding.
Well, also a couple of other, just to throw them out there, examples that are outside the realm of DCO but are definitely workforce. We've got a great example of a public-private partnership with our partnership between IDOT, the community colleges, and the unions and contractors.
But that's exactly what we want to create a list.
I mean, that,
What we're trying to do with this public-private,
Yeah.
we're trying to get some different spectrums of different models to utilize. And then we can use the models in order to incorporate it into the legislative process of how we can make this the biggest step. Bottom line. And that's what we're trying to do. What they're doing in UPS is how they're developing those programs, what they're doing in community colleges and different, and even locales might be different. And I think that's what we're finding is that to get the models out there, we have to find the locales, how it's the flexibility. They have their own built-in flexibility, and we need to try to incorporate how we can even make it better for all the communities. And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to find the models.
Yeah. So I
Well,
could,
and what legislation maybe prevents or...
Exactly. Well, that's the thing.
But the question is, could you have done that through we at Title I?
Right.
probably not.
Well, we did it in spite, yeah. Right.
No, I'm saying what she did
Right.
would not have been allowable under we at Title I.
Done what you're doing under
Yeah,
Title I,
right.
what you're doing.
And a lot of the stuff our locals couldn't do with
Right.
we at Title I that we could do with statewide levels.
So that's
Or a lot of what business and industry does.
Right.
We couldn't do.
I mean, bottom line is, we've had people come in, you know, and we've had some of the major employers come to us and say, well, we can't find veterans, you know, there's a reason why we can't find veterans, you know, this type of situation.
They're all taking classes at the community college.
Exactly. Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, the problem is that,
I'm not kidding.
yeah. But the bottom line is that we're trying to mainstream this thing back into what are models that are actually getting accountability working, because the bottom line is that if we're going to the bureaucracy of it, it's not going to work. And I think I really feel that the private side will give us honest appraisals on how we looked at and give advice to the legislative task force what's going to be successful, because I think they have the ear of what that legislator is wanting to have for the change in the reauthorization.
But it's also, like I say, what we have legislative updates at the bottom here is it's like changes to do what? And so if the what is public-private partnerships, how do all these funding streams, like there's a lot of stuff you guys can't do with Perkins and Adult Ed that you need to do this.
Yeah,
You can't do
now I
that you used to,
understand,
you
okay.
could do.
Right.
So it's not just we at Title I, it's
No.
if we wanted to now not contort our funding streams, but actually allow them to do these things, what's the what? And that's what the,
Okay.
do you know what I mean?
No,
To do what?
it's a similar issue with Wagner Piper, where we only get credit for certain wages that we place people into, when so many of the people, if we could work with them, get credit for it, we could place them in a slightly lower wage job where they'll quickly advance up.
Exactly.
Training program. So
Exactly.
why they're knocking us for getting people. So there's a lot. And that was the only one thing I wanted to mention about the mission, or add to the mission of the task force. I just want to make sure, and I think your report's great, including more of a role from the community colleges, that we're focused on the whole. You know, we need to make sure there's representatives from every part if we're going for general reauthorization, so that, you know, all of this is included.
Yeah, and I think that's where inadvertently we've been talking about Title I, and we need to expand that. So we, for example, have done just a review of our Title I legislation, and this is what we need for more flexibility. We should do the same for all the funding.
And I think we sent you some stuff on Title.
Yeah, everybody, yeah. But I mean, I think if we could do that and then merge it into one document, so we could do this, expand this to the local level.
Yeah, and the whole idea is to figure out what we're trying to do in public-private partnerships and say, well, how do you take all the different legislative changes needed to actually allow all these streams to be used for this?
Right.
But you got to get, first of all, what's this? And so that's the idea, is getting models, what are their key characteristics, and then design around them. Does that make sense? So we then figure out what are we trying to get changes to do this?
Right. And I think it's different size models too, because the one thing we did get addressed in our initiative meetings we've had is that the smaller mid-businesses, it's not all the Caterpillars, it's not all the John Deeres or all the UPSs, it's those smaller businesses out there. And that really relates back to the legislative viewpoint from the locale, how you address those individuals and how you get their needs met. So I think this is something that we need to find some kind of a model to make that work. And that's what we're trying to do, is identify models to help on all different spectrums we have. Just because you have one works for UPS, it doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody employing 50 people. you know, our little small.
And that was Don's point when we talked on the phone with him, was to basically make this, do the solution for the small and mid-sized companies, and that solution will work for the bigger ones if we need to, but make it fit.
Make it fit. And in that way, we have the flexibility incorporated in what we have. But once again, just to reestablish what Jay said and everyone else and stuff, this is all a partnership.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing about it. The bottom line is the public-private, if we keep them together with the partners, all they're care about is the one efforts to get their needs met. We get the legislative, it gets to be a different animal, if you understand what I'm talking about, okay? So, you see what I'm saying? That's the reason why we're taking this from a legislative point, is basically the private side, we have to address what their needs is because that's truly what the legislator wants.
Because now just let me, because I'm just trying, so when we go out, I just mean, you know, whatever, go out, the whole idea is that you're speaking with one voice about, like we did when we went to DC, you're speaking with one voice about priorities.
Right.
And these are the more or less federal priorities.
Well, I think what's better, what we do is we actually don't speak, we let the business.
No, I know. No, I don't mean we. That's why I said, when I said we, I don't mean we.
Yeah.
But it is about those issues that can be impacted by federal.
But by this, so like there are other legislative issues that are not related to public-private partnerships.
Right.
Exactly.
That each of our agencies are trying to move forward based on their own
We're not
issues.
dealing with those.
And we're just saying, let's all come together around how these streams can be enabled to do this. And it's not like there's not other issues out there.
Correct. Well, and the businesses say, sorry, Jay.
Oh, okay. Maybe we should give you an example of like how one of these meetings have gone. And so essentially what we've been doing is we go in, do a round of introductions, kind of give an initial little framework of all of the whole workforce system, just so that way the congressperson who maybe knew or whatever else knows what we're talking about, and then just turn it over to the business community. And then kind of on the back end, we fill in the details of what the legislative needs are, what programs funded what they're talking about, because the business community shouldn't and doesn't need to know which, part of the bureaucracy that helps them. And we share some of those details and then give them a packet that has more of the specifics on the legislative needs that they hand up to the staff.
Okay.
And as Tom said, that was the most effective
that makes sense. I just didn't.
Format.
Okay.
Well, the bottom line, like, once again, is that, you know, with this, we can make policy recommendations on the state and federal level. I mean, that's what they're looking for. If we didn't get our eyes open, I did, when we had our meeting with Durbin, who was completely open and completely frank with us. It was amazing. He identified to us the problem. We didn't have to ask him. I mean, he said you got everything drug screening to, you know, duplication of effort, so you're going to have flexibility. Tell me how you're going to make this thing work and how you're going to get it fixed. And I'm telling you, that's one of the reasons why we went back and said, guys, we have to refocus on this mission and what we need to do. And it is. And Durbin didn't want to talk. He didn't look at them. He said, well, what would make it better for you? He looked at the employer. He said, what would make it better for you? How could you do your job better? And that's what we got to do. We have to have it driven from that employer side. And actually, he begged us for a model. And that's one of the things we need to try to make sure we're doing. And I'm ashamed that we haven't done a follow-up with them as quickly as we want to, but I think we're in the process of doing that, working with it. I know that, Jay, you might have done some correspondence with him, but I know we're trying to work with Adam to try and develop some aspects from the different departments, what we need to. But I think it's going to come from something from the public-private side. I think that was what he was wanting, basically, for it. He doesn't want to get involved in the policy recommendations and the fights and everything else and stuff. He's wanting to know how it makes it work.
So can we just, because I'm embarrassed that we haven't given them more of a concrete response, and I know, can we use people's gas as an example of how we coordinated our systems and how, I mean, just use that one example because it is all inclusive with unions, with
Well, he also asked for some material to provide sort of a bigger picture guidance if he was going to make some phone calls about some of these issues and that kind of stuff we did provide. You know, I don't think we gave him, we handed him their general sort of legislative.
I think we were talking about, I think he was mainly concerned about the flexibility, make sure it's insured, and I think the other thing was
duplication was one thing we
yeah.
But, and then how we work. I think he basically wanted a prototype for Illinois to
and LeBron, just to kind of speak to you, the community college was first and foremost on his mind. He thought that was the basis of what a lot of the federal legislation was looking at. So, I mean.
Well, yeah.
So, do we have what you shared? Jay shared with him?
No, Jay, did you share some with Durbin already? Maybe you can share with the rest of the committee or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think we sent it to you, didn't we?
I never got it.
Okay. Great.
I mean, maybe I don't remember seeing it. But, and we're going, and Jay, I'm going to go up with them on, when we going out to next?
February 19th,
Yeah.
Shanna Cherry runs the governor's DC office. We're setting up a whole bunch of meetings for us about some workforce issues with Congress people. Kind of, you know, the intent was more specifically about funding as we're walking up to
I agree.
Yeah.
cliffs. Now there's 3 of them. So, well, I guess they pushed one in the back. So maybe there's 2 now. Hard to
Well,
keep
that's when
track
you
of all
stand a
the
cliff and a little bit of it breaks off, and
Right.
you step back, and then a little bit more of the rocks break
Yeah.
off, and you step back, a little more of the rocks kind of, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of like
Yeah.
tiered how far you're
Yeah.
going to fall.
And, you know,
And that makes sense, so we'll just focus that on our.
and quite as a follow-up, yeah, go
Because
ahead.
we're not going to have the business community
At that,
at,
yeah.
at all of these. And I think we all agreed when we set up this task force, that the best idea was to have the business community from their specific district come in and community college and local workforce partners in their office. And this is not going to be feasible. So I think we're going to keep this more to just some
Money.
very acute funding.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. And,
And so we're already set on those dates and changes.
and Levon, this even goes back to Bob and I testified for the NGA, basically to the subcommittees back in April. And we were one of 4 states that picked on the models of how we do workforce investment. The only thing that we're actually concerned about, and no offense, they had one was Department of Labor, one was the Department of thing. The only one they wanted to talk to was just the private, what we did in public-private, and, you know, what my role was as a mayor and everything else and stuff. So I'm just telling you, it was
Oh,
driven.
no, I'm just trying to get yeah.
So, I mean, that's what we're looking at, and that's why we think at the core of this, and that's why I said at the board meeting, is that we gotta have this subcommittee and make sure, because the bottom line is,
I agree.
Levon, at the board, we've been striving for years and years of getting the private side on board, because we've had colleagues just sitting next to each other, and we had nobody on the private side. We're trying to develop that, and
I
that's one of the
agree.
things that I want to be working with John Rico and whoever to make sure the governor makes these appointments so we can get this thing set up. Because it's going to be important that we get this thing done. Yes. Well, I've been talking a lot. How about these people on the phone? Sandy, you've been on the board for a lot of years and a veteran of this, plus, and Mary, and all your, any comments from online?
I was just taking a little nap, Tom.
That's why I love you, Sandy.
That was a stimulating conversation.
We've heard it before.
Okay, wake up.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so then, and Therese, we have other projects. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about what, the UPS, if we want to mention that here today, or we're not ready to. Well, no. Or, and, the disabilities project with Sandy.
Disability. Oh, yeah, no, well, UPS, Erica, it's just more of a question, and I thought John was going to be here to talk with you. He's, as you know, is the IWIB board member, and was asking again about potentially hiring young adults into the UPS system prior to recruiters coming out to recruit them into the military. So it seems a little it's sketchy to me. So then if a person gets 6 months, for example, at UPS and then goes into the military, they come back
And they've
with
got,
their
yes.
with their job, with their increases, et cetera. So he wanted to talk about that, and I said that would be something that we'd have to obviously talk to you
I had heard
about.
him talk about it and say that people come back and they get their, is that what you mean?
Oh, good.
They get all
This
their-
is Erica. I'm not sure. Seems to be a conversation I've had one-on-one with him, with his thought being that if you can get the recruiters to stop recruiting straight out of high school and let them go first to some place like UPS where they follow the rules of the, of the service members protection, that they then return to a job that's been held for them. But that's, I mean, it is a good idea. I'm not sure we're ever going to convince Army and Navy recruiters to not get somebody to sign the dotted line for 6 months.
This is an issue with their bargaining unit contract where they enter the labor union and they keep their seniority when they come out of it too.
Well, it's more of a getting a veteran to come back to the job.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but you're saying.
It's to do with the Army.
We're talking about all their seniority and other rights that they got their increases while they were in the...
Yeah, I don't know about it, but I don't know. But I mean, he wanted it, and I don't know how you want to follow up with that or do it, Erica, because he keeps
Yeah, I definitely think it's, I mean, surely there are follow-on labor-related issues. I think the crux of the issue has to do with recruiting by the armed services and whether they've put some strategic thought to the type of model that he suggests. And that's certainly something I can connect him to. Clearly, we don't control it, but I can connect him to some contacts in D.C. on the DOD side, which is where that would be.
Okay, that would be great.
That seems like a really tough issue. How are they going to guarantee those folks are getting a job at UPS and they have any that, prior to them being?
Well, that's what I mean. That's why I was like, you better talk to Erica.
Well, and how many employers like UPS want to hire just to watch them go off for 3 years and hold it the whole time? I mean, that takes a pretty unique employer.
Yeah, it seems
for sure.
too good to be true almost.
Well, I guess if we just helped them hire 400 people, so you could send the recruiters after those folks.
There you go. There you go. I don't know, I have to address his issue. So. Okay. So maybe we can do that. We can just put him in touch with the department.
And what about the disability project?
This was Sandy. You had just mentioned that you wanted to say something about it here, but if we're not ready to, that's fine.
I'm forgetting what it is. Sandy.
Sandeep.
Oh, Sandeep. Oh, Sandeep, we're meeting with him next week. He wants to create a autism training, IT training program for young adults with autism to get them to higher functioning, to get them into the the IT sector. It's obviously a good fit for that challenge. So we're talking about them now.
Okay, kind of keep on pace here. Basically, we've had a little general discussion about the public-private sector and the focus of it as we need to go along. But I think what mainly we're going to come out of this whole thing is that we're going to have reports. And the reports are going to identify in the research that we have, identifying the objectives, but more importantly, the report we come up with from this public-private sector committee will be able to develop the models we have. But if we can, we'll just take a minute. Everybody has a paper, the private sector subcommittee. I'm going to let Bob kind of just go through that real quickly and briefly, just kind of just to identify what we've been trying to make sure that we identify on this committee. But the bottom line is that we're trying to identify the objectives of what's precluding people from being able to be effective at it, but more importantly, just kind of research to do the small and medium, and then that can be interacted to the large. So Bob, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, we got on the phone with Don and kind of fleshed out what he thought would be the best thing to do. And so we try to write this up in terms of a purpose statement and objectives with deliverables for our discussion today. So if you look on the purpose statement, it's to identify leading models, mostly for small to mid-sized companies, that and then use those models to make recommendations on federal and state policy to make these things partnerships work. And so in general idea would be to go out and identify 10 representative, or I'm not saying 10 is a magic word, but so many representative cross-section. We'll say one could be the People's Gas, one could be LaBonjour Department of Transportation project. A representative cross-section across sectors that we think are what the kind of stuff we should be doing more of. And then use those as an examples to flesh out what are the roles of all the parties, what are the types of training options that should be done, what are the different multiple sources of funding that should be leveraged to do this, what's the model documentation that we should be using across program streams, not we at Title I. What are some of the ways in which, and it's based on private sector models, how do you, also we get in some reactions that how do you show and report whether you're successful or not? How do you report outcomes? But it's got to be from a public-private, because most of these are shared investments, right? The private sector is investing sometimes half, if not more, of the money. And then the last is make recommendations based on that, what you would have to do in federal and state legislation to make these same things happen more often and without a lot of trying to go around requirements.
Right. Is Dave Declan on the line?
No.
And then how, because we can do more at state level than the local, so we...
You're right. But again, this is across all the streams. And so this, imagine, LaVon, remember the pain on one-stops across the streams? This is a different way to approach it. It's not about bringing people together. It's about organizing around the employer.
Exactly.
Just a different viewpoint, but still we'll be looking about how to leverage Perkins funds, How do you do as adult ed better? So it's not just we at Title I, it's across the whole gamut of, and I don't even know what that means in terms of how much. But the whole idea was to get so many examples up, because people react to examples, but those examples can be used for presentations to our legislators, because they work with cases. But then the idea that when we present things about what we need changes to do this that we just talked about, we have a list. Anyway, that's the idea. The idea is that because obviously we have a little fiscal problems here for the spring, but we need to be teed up for the fall at least, or summer, fall with this stuff. Absolutely. And so the idea would be to make it on real cases that we have talking people with.
Yeah. Right. In the cost savings, to the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, and I think, a great example of this, which has all of us involved, is the people's energy with labor. I mean, I think those are the examples you start to look for, where, there's a defined need from an employer. We help out doing the recruitment and veterans as well, identifying folks, then sign up a program through GCEO, through Title I, where then the education dollars are spent through. So if you guys think colleges, right? That's the perfect example of all this coming together. Exactly. So let's say people's gas is one, but we need to come up with a representative cross section that involves manufacturing and involve other things. But then we need to say is all the people who are involved in this project, you probably understood if I had this change or whatever, I could have done this much easier, much faster, and much better for the employer. And so we want to use those cases as ways in which we can work together better. But the first step would be in this task force was come up with, I would say, about 10.
Right.
And we ought to get nominations from the different agencies and partners on what those 10 would be.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then for people's guests, for example, it's great, and I love the fact that we're working with veterans, but that's the only population we can work with, because of
This is Erica. If I could just add one point to what Jay just said on the people's gas piece, which is that one of the aspects that made it so successful in terms of people staying in the program and completing it, and I think it's something that's replicable to other models, is that you had, in this instance, my agency, but really any outside agency that meets that demographic, that's providing support that has absolutely nothing to do with the actual training, right? So we brought our veteran service officers in there, and when somebody was struggling or going to, fall out, or they needed funding for this or that, we found veteran-specific resources to meet gaps that had nothing to do with the training they were going through. And I think that aspect of the model kept a lot of people in and could be replicated elsewhere. If you've got a program targeting folks with disabilities, perhaps you bring in and fund in some way National Able or some other outside entity that can provide the all-around wraparound support that keeps people in the program.
Exactly, and if I can work off that example and show how it's also been brought up in our bridge program stuff, about support service wraparound with adult ed. But the problem is that we need to say is that's a type of service that's important to public-private partnerships. We need to figure out across all the funding streams how that could be righted regardless of the individual participating.
Right, and actually Erica did bring that up today, why they were so successful because of the support services. Right.
So, the goal with these is to identify 10 that would showcase some of the legislative changes we want to do, because at the same time, we want to have examples for each one of the congressional meetings we have that are actually from their district, so that's at least 18, but a lot more than that. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear, like there's still the component of this, if I understand this correctly, this is more about showing real-life examples and how we could have made it easier if they make it
even better, and they got the
which is then separate from the recruiting that we've done and will continue to do for our congressional meetings, which are more highlighting.
Yes,
exactly right.
Success from an
and make a recommendation to the legislative committee how we can
you're going to have some overlap. You're going to have some overlap, sure. but these are designed to say we all think these are pretty cool.
Yes.
And we could have done these better.
Right.
And done more of them if we had.
Right. Absolutely. But so then the focus when we're looking for these shouldn't just be on the ones that are some of the best examples of our services. They should be one that point out some of the impediments in the legislation. Mm-hmm. So when we're looking for these, and when we go back to our focus to identify some of these, we need to be identifying ones that,
and that's when we have those,
showcase these impediments.
And that's what I'm saying is, when we meet with the employers, how we can make it better for them and everything else, and that gives them a chance to.
Because even in our best cases, even our most successful best cases,
Failure.
had some barriers.
Frankly,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some of these that have failed, because of
Could be a
some of the
risk.
barriers in the legislation, might even make a better.
I think it's a great idea,
That's good.
So are we
Okay.
looking then, we're not looking among the 10
Yep.
For common elements of success?
No.
Okay, I just want to clarify.
And it doesn't have to be all our agencies, we could do, I mean, obviously we partner a lot with IWIB.
Yeah.
Well, and a good
with the,
example is, what Bob said before, I think before the meeting started, is we could have done some of these projects with via Title I anyway, so we need to, from our side, say, if this legislation was changed, this is what we could have brought to the table and made.
Sure.
But
So maybe some of your ETIP or
Right.
KTED or other programs are
but
examples that you'd like to do with WIA.
But I think we need to, because we have two different things going on, but I pick up on what Jay said. We need to pick these out for their value
Yeah.
in communicating what we could have done better if we were, but we don't want, I don't think we want things that are just totally without employer engagement or totally without.
Yeah, sure.
But in most of these cases, LaVon, I don't know if you'd agree, but everything one I'm aware of, we could have done some things better if we didn't have certain restrictions.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be some of that.
So we're looking to
And
then,
even if they weren't, excuse me,
No, no, go ahead.
even if they weren't restrictions, I think we could have done better, not so much with a restriction, but with what was left out, which in some cases was stronger employer engagement, because, I mean, that's not a restriction, that's something we just didn't do in a lot of cases.
And that's
Well,
why.
yeah, like on the
I mean-
training, for example, we could have done more support services, we could have, it would have been much easier for the employers to enroll via clients. I mean, there was a lot of issues that we had to go around to get that money spent.
Yes.
By the
Yeah, I
time they-
mean, not
by the
everything
time
is
they
because
won,
there's a
then it's too late and
restriction,
everything
some
else,
things are
that's
because
built
we
program.
just didn't push it
But
enough.
again, if I can, I think we're now have a better sense based on Jay's
Okay,
comments and others,
yeah.
that we're all on kind of agreement with what
Got
we're
it.
looking for in the cases. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Could I
the other
ask, this is Mary Rose, could I ask, our objective here is not only to provide jobs for people, but also to retain them in the jobs they have.
Right,
Absolutely.
that's a very good point, right.
Yeah.
So we have two objectives here
Yeah.
Exactly.
in terms of identifying private, public partnerships, right?
so the goal here maybe to, I'll do my best to try and summarize it, right? So we're looking for approximately 10 examples, having couple good success stories where all of us work together and show what the system can actually do. So I think we're all agreed Peoples is one. Sure, we can easily come up with a couple more. Then also to go through some other ones which involve the private sector and a partnership there and some of the that highlight some of the problems in the legislation that barred us from having those same successes we've had with other programs, whether it's retaining folks, whether it's with training, whether it's with our job matching, with the salary restrictions we have, whether it's some issues with the funding streams for adult ed or Perkins or community colleges, job, right?
Right.
That's we're all on the same page.
Yep.
And the bottom
I
line,
can come up with how many do you want?
yeah, the bottom line is,
10, right? So we
and
got
let's not forget the
Well,
point
no,
of this.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to restrict, I just,
No, I think
I want to remind you that we're trying to get this done by June 30th.
Bottom line is this, and let's not forget the point is, this is going to be employer driven. This is not department driven, okay? This is going to be employer driven. And then we're talking about from the employer's viewpoint. They're going to be the most honest. I'm being honest with you guys. They're all out. You can't be honest because you're going to have your feelings, but you're not going to say I got the worst department or anything else and stuff. This is going to be employer driven. That's the reason why we're going to this process. And that's the only way this thing works. So they're going to be honest. You're not going to have to worry about the problems. They're going to tell you what the problems are. They can't get people there and everything else and stuff. You can assess. You can say, well, how can we make it better and everything else, but we've got to keep this in mind. It's an employer driven. Otherwise, if we get convoluted with other things, that's when we're going to process.
Because also we're going to find that in some cases we could have done it better, not because we needed federal legislation changes, it's that we have kind of urban myths out there about what you can or cannot do with your funds
That's right.
at our local level,
That's
state and local level.
And then once we bypass that, and then it makes sure we can come up with policy changes, whatever else to do it. But let's not forget, it's employer driven. And the recommendations go to that committee and go from there.
This is Mary Rose again. I hope we'll consider the Harper program, Harper Community College or Harper College. They have a program. I hope it's doing well. I read about it and I haven't heard too much lately, but I think that's a perfect
Are
employer-driven.
you talking about the INAM, Advanced
Right.
Manufacturing?
Right.
That was Yeah, that's a big grant, right, a federal grant.
But I mean, it's you know, it's just certainly employer involvement. They participated heavily in
Yes,
the
they
design.
did.
I think that's a perfect example of driven by a group of employers.
Okay,
Go ahead, Bob.
can we now, if we all kind of roughly know what we're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
can we talk about a time frame to come up with a longer list than 10? And going back with Mary Rose's point, we need to have a combination, so some of them are incumbent, upgrade, right? Some of them are pre-employment, so we have to have a representative cross-section, and also geographic-wise.
Right.
So what's the process should we follow to get these in the hopper?
Turn them all into Lisa by a certain date.
Okay,
Right.
all right, by what time?
I just didn't want to volunteer you, Lisa.
Well, I am the queen of events now. I don't know if y'all knew that. I just said that just the other day.
Can we have it done by the end of the month?
By the end of
We weren't
January?
that good at it.
How about the end of the month?
That's next week.
That's why I said end of the month, so that people wouldn't check their calendars. If I said next week, it's been done
I
already.
can't because we've got board meeting of
February
president's council
15th.
the week.
February 15th?
February 15th, let's make it February
I think
15th,
it's
because
February 15th.
we've kind of put in there some timelines we're looking at, because,
Lisa, can you send out a format of what you're asking for?
Yeah.
So it just can't be a name.
right.
And
You
then,
can't just say People's Gas.
Right.
It's called Dave.
And can we keep it to like a one-pager for each one?
That's,
I mean,
doing the
you-
format.
Yeah.
And-
Don't you think enough to decide whether to move on with it? We should be able to
Right.
give you what you need in one page.
Yeah.
And can we try and do
Less
one
is more.
southern, one urban, one central?
Well, some of ours are scattered all over. We have it across the state.
you know, we don't want them all to be in Thomastown.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like hell,
the
they'll be there
IDOT,
anyway,
the
hell.
colleges all across the state.
Yeah.
So we cover the entire state.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be the
If
same
they
for
could,
us.
what?
Okay, I just don't want like all Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
No, most of our best examples are downstate.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, so
so,
what
Can
did
you-
you say,
can you-
February what?
15th?
Yeah.
And on that one pager, I mean, let's have a specific box, like, what is the impediment in the legislation for why this didn't, right, that we
Right.
put a specific in there on.
And we also get any recommendations from employers too, this would be an idea.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Yeah,
Jay?
Then once we have those, we can then work with those specific employers, and they can fill in the whole narrative on what their promise once
Okay,
they
and Steve and Mary Rose and Sandy, if you guys want to send me some ideas from your end about what you think were good projects that you all were involved in or heard about, that would be awesome.
Right. In fact, I wanted to bring up, Jay, the Plytech issue with your people from Veterans Affairs placing people in some of our companies just from meeting them at the Legislative Task Force meetings. I think that was a perfect serendipity that if we could build on that, that would be a wonderful, process to do that. I know Gideon was planning to come out here to talk to us about how we would develop a process, but then he had a baby.
Yep,
Oh, yes.
doing great.
Yeah.
So if you need someone to come out real soon, I'd be happy to, but he'll be back February 5th.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amelia Jane, she's doing great.
Yeah.
Well, so that we have some sort of more of a formal process, so it's not just serendipity.
Sure.
Because we have so many of our employers that are looking for veterans and looking for people, and complaining about bureaucratic issues in hiring them.
Well, starting March 1st, we will have our first 15 business service coordinators that are going to focus solely with working with employers and doing all of their job matching into full-time
Well, that'd be
jobs.
wonderful. And to Erica's point, I think that from what we've seen, what she brought up with support systems in place to help people with things that have nothing to do with training, absolutely important to include that example or any other successful examples. So do you want this to be examples in general, what partnerships work, or identified certain companies?
Company.
Companies, employer driven.
Okay. Well, yeah, but I mean, we have 400 companies, so that we work with every single year.
Right.
So.
I have one pager on every one.
What? Yeah. Yeah. Mary Rose, how about you just giving like the give like the top 10?
Yeah.
There you go.
Hey, Bob Sheets.
Or, you know, obviously some of the, Mary Rose, some of the ones that you took me to where they used the WIA dollars and some of the other partners to do the incumbent worker training and that, you know,
Right.
you know, obviously those.
That'd be better paces.
Yeah.
It'd be the ones that,
The ones that use our, you know, and then maybe even E-tip and how this could have been done with WIA and, you know, recruiting from.
And where's ETIP?
Yeah, what E-tip?
Where's ETIP, Levon?
Okay, now we're gonna get away from that thing. All right, so everybody has identified the private sector subcommittee. We have the timelines. Bob will kind of keep with those. In fact, February 15th. If you have any questions, contact Lisa.
and Lisa will send out a format by the end of the month, you think, that people can do? And then, Tom, when do you want to have the first meeting of the group to review these?
Well, we had said in the packet is a meeting schedule, and we were going to tie the subcommittee meetings to the larger legislative task force meetings, so folks don't have to meet twice. But we might want to jump off that a little bit, because our next task force meeting is going to be March 14th.
Okay, good, that's fine.
That's fine. Leave it March 14th.
No, but the idea is that if you could compile all the ones you got and send it out to the group,
Right.
just in case there's some sort of buyer's remorse on what I sent in.
Right, sure.
And we might see some overlap, and we may say, well, we need some more Southern Illinois ones because we're short on that.
Okay.
If we could just do that and do that going back and forth iterations until the 14th,
Yeah.
then we select based on
At
that.
least in March time to kind of decide, but obviously you're going to have duplications from, you know, some of these, which is good. And we'll-
Okay.
So we're going to basically keep with March 14th, and then we kind of set a tentatively schedule for the rest of them. And like I said, we're going to try to have both meetings at the same time. That way it keeps people from having to do duplication. Basically have the same place, same locale for them to be able to attend. But the bottom line is March 14th will be the next meeting, so we kind of, subcommittee and the legislative committee too as well.
All right. And we'll talk
And then,
about that a little more later.
Okay, then real quickly, I want to kind of get an update on the legislative visits, kind of give a follow-up from our perspective from the committee itself, myself. I'm going to be trying to do a conversation with Adam, kind of bring him up to date on what the efforts of WIA is as well, but more importantly, what the legislative task force is doing, and the importance of making sure that we get those appointments of the private side to the appointed to the board, and making sure that we have the right individuals at our IWIB board, because that has to be the nucleus what we have.
And then, in fact, we need some recommendations on practice.
Okay, private sector board members might be something we could take.
Some of the ones you're already trying to get on?
I don't think we have a lot outstanding. I think it's, I'll send you the current board members on that.
Okay.
And then whatever, a lot of them are like appointing and
And so if anybody online knows of individuals too, they might have been sent a recommendation. Does everyone hear that? We've had some private vacancies on the board, and anybody online want to submit some names, we'd like to look at that too as well.
Are you looking for particular sectors, or does it matter?
Well, the bottom line is that we definitely need like to have healthcare, transportation, IT, and everything else, that's trying to do the 5 critical aspects, okay?
I went through this with.
We got John already on there,
Yeah.
we have travel type thing, healthcare, I don't know who we got on healthcare anymore.
3 years after
Well,
the
nobody
term
really.
expired. And then, so I got that done, and then they've
How
already
do you
sent
feel
all their
like
package to
something
bring
like,
up them for
hey,
Oh, yeah, that's.
next time, but I want to make sure that the
Hey.
current folks at least.
Hey.
get
So
that.
government
transportation?
I know, but is that considered a private
Well, that's employer.
employer?
How's everybody doing on the
Okay.
newsletter?
Pretty good, she's been doing a lot of phone calls after them. They got a little split up, you know, because Gideon knows a lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
For those of you who don't know, Gideon used to be a chief staff for a member of Congress, so he knows most of the chiefs of staff, and people have now moved from one person to somebody else, and so he's been out, so he's been making a lot of the initial calls to get us in, and then Elizabeth schedules are there, but she has done a lot of the reaching out. Actually, I asked her, turns out she's sick today, I asked her this morning to send me a chart, so I can
Oh, okay.
see what you guys said. But she's already made a lot of those calls, and we have some, like a group of dates that we're looking at for some new members. I mean, it's been a real challenge with some of the new members who, you know, didn't have an office, don't have any staff, didn't have a phone number, you know, but she's been getting through it. And I had a good conversation with, do you call him Congressman General Enyart now, or just Congressman at this point? But I saw him at the inauguration.
Yeah.
He's real excited about me.
Yeah, he's very, very excited. Matter of fact, he's going to do some visits in our area and stuff like that, so he's really, really excited. Yeah, he'll be a good one to have on board, so. And Rodney Davis, we got something working on him?
Yes.
Okay. Huh? We do?
Yeah, we saw.
Let's just get something with Rodney right away. I want to make sure we get Rodney on board right away if we can.
Well, yeah, I need to see the video.
Yeah, we can make sure we get that happen. Okay, and then another thing I will follow up, just kind of legislative visits, reaching out to those new board members, new congressional leaders we have, but more importantly, as I said, Adam, I want to make sure we do that. I'm going to do a letter to Richard Durbin. I'll share it with the members too as well to kind of bring them an update to a follow-up from ours. And then maybe, Adam, after we bring him up to date, he has some ideas and thoughts, but I want to make sure that I have my feelings as legislative task force chairman, and I'll share that with everyone else and stuff, and I'll be sending that to him probably within the next couple of days. But I was only fair that I'd bring it up to this committee that I am going to do that. So I'm going to be very open about that. So we'll be reaching out to new members. It takes Jay's involvement on that to make sure we're getting that together, and the new ones we have. As you said, Congressman would be very good down there in the southern part of the he's excited about doing some things in the area. Matter of fact, to go on some of the manufacturers and stuff like that. Rend Lake College, I think he's already going to schedule something up down there too as well. So that'd be really good. So we'll get something down at Rend Lake College going with him. He's see what they did, Continental Tire and Cold and everything else and stuff. So he's all very, very excited about that. So I think we kind of move on here if we can. Legislative update, and we're going to have that. And
all right. Yesterday, I'm going to do the budget real quick. We don't really have anything to say on Title I. We're just now getting back in session. We haven't really seen any new legislation coming forth. But we yesterday participated in a webinar that the National Skills Coalition, why is that coming up? The National Skills Coalition did on the fiscal cliff, and I wanted you guys to see this picture, which is Republicans and Democrats in a car driving over a cliff. And they're all saying, I'm not going to drive, I'm not going to drive. But anyway, we were able to find this, and it was a really informative webinar. They gave some ideas on what was the fiscal cliff all about. Right. So she said it was, firing tax provisions. Yeah, go ahead. Deep automatic across-the-board cuts, hitting the debt ceiling. Go to the next one. What did the fiscal deal do? So she talked about that, how it was the main focus was on taxes, that expanded UI. Flip to the next one. What did the fiscal cliff deal do? And that was a really good slide that she just kind of broke out what happened in each of those areas. What happened in taxes.
Send me a copy of that, would you?
Yeah, sure will.
Actually, just send it to the group, because like I said, I lost my phone number to get on.
What did the fiscal deal not do? If you go to the next one, it didn't address the debt ceiling. It did not permanently turn off sequesters. It only delayed them for 2 months. Go to the next one. And so then she talked a lot about, well, what does that mean? So there's 3 major hurdles to get over in the next 3 to 4 months. Increasing the debt ceiling, turning off or buying down the sequester, and then finish the 2013 appropriations. And at the same time, as you can see, it's going to spill over to the 14 budget approach. Next one. She gave us a calendar of how it's all going to happen. Go to the next one. Thank you. The debt ceiling, and actually as she was talking and we were participating in the webinar, a couple of us that are on email groups got popped up that the House had voted to suspend the debt ceiling. So that happened right while we were talking to her. And she had also said that the administration had put something out that they'll sign that. So go to the next slide. Then he was talked about it's unclear how the debate will play out. In the short term, it pulls apart the debt ceiling and spending cuts. Bad news, it syncs the debt ceiling with the budget process. And she's thinking that they're going to really use reconciliation to enforce even deeper spending cuts. And then it reorders the timeline. Okay, then you skip, most policymakers agree that sequesters are wrong. And then there's also some concern out there. She thinks that Congress really is now going to kind of put sequesters, they're not going to be as interested in it, I guess, for the lack of a better word, sequestration.
You mean let it happen, or
yes.
Or not?
Not let it happen. No, let it happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
That they will let it happen. They're not going to be interested in stopping it.
Right.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Because they're going to move on.
Yeah.
Right. So then this was a good thing that she said for us on finishing the 13 appropriations, that any budget cuts they won't come back and take our money back from us for those that are advanced funding, like WIA.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. They said they gave this money.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So there's other, I guess, ones that are like that. So go to the next slide. Talk about the budget, much greater focus on the budget this year because of the debt ceiling. Expect the House budget resolution to include very deep cuts to both entitlement and discretionary programs, and again, she reinforced the whole reconciliation. And then she talked about what other policy issues were going to be out there. Of course, you can see gun control, immigration, but there's a lot of talk that they're going to be doing attention to skills and workforce development. She did say that they're expecting in the 14 budget process for them to come out again with that universal displaced worker program.
Oh.
So go to the next slide.
That's pretty much probably workforce development.
Right. So workforce development policy, these were two things that she said that they're also expecting to see is the community colleges to career fund and pathways back to work proposals. And then she said she didn't really have anything really to say about that, the new skills agenda question mark, but there's some rumblings out there that they're going to do something, but she wasn't really sure what. Can you hit the next slide? Thanks. Lots of potential legislation in Congress, as you can see. She's got WIA, TNF, CTE, AGA, TAA. They're all up for reauthorization. They're thinking with trade because isn't AGA the Higher Education Act?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's got all the financial aid stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's where all that Pell and...
Oh, right.
And she said, you know, it's likely that they'll just let TAA expire. Because especially...
So we'll revert back to the 2002 legislation.
No, TAA will go away.
With the universal displaced worker?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we
Because
thought.
that's tied to the universal displaced worker
So basically,
program.
they're taking dislocated worker and trade dollars and
But
merging them
here
into
was
one.
the interesting thing. There had, you know, last
Jesus.
session, they didn't really, you know, there was a little bit that you could read about it, you know, and you could see if you got into the budget detail how they were spending down the money and transferring it to this universal displaced worker pot. But she thinks that it's, she said that it's not really good. It's not really that bad for the trade workers, but it is really bad because right now they can get $20,000 in training, and through the universal displaced worker program, they would only get like 4 or 6 or whatever that number was. So.
But they haven't
No. She was just, I was just interested in her interpretation of it because I didn't at all agree with it. Because I don't think it's good for trade customers. It's good for the WIA side, I think.
But we don't know what the displaced worker definition is going to be. Is it going to be more towards trade or more towards displaced worker?
Right. Exactly. If it's based on it was like it was last year, just a little bit of information was out there, it's kind of a hybrid, but it definitely backs off the dollar amount for training for what a trade customer would get now, or could potentially get.
So I may have this wrong, but I know that other times when it expired, it went back to a previous version of the legislation. So
That's
in this
true.
case, they are then going to,
I
do
think,
they have to vote to get rid of this?
you know what, I need to check into that because I know they also passed that legislation. There's legislation laying, and I might get this wrong too, but I think there's legislation laying around out there that says if a program is not reauthorized from this point forward and it expires, it's gone.
Okay.
And if Andrew were here, he would be able to tell us right now.
Right.
Yeah, so, okay. But we need to check into that, so let us check into it and get back.
Right,
Yeah,
because when that,
Yeah, before we, right.
so it would be a piece of legislation that passed after that rule went in, and then is not reauthorized would expire.
Right.
Not that anything that hadn't been reauthorized,
Right.
aka WIA,
Right.
would just then disappear one
Exactly.
day.
Right. That's correct.
That made it.
Because they did reauthorize trade through
Right.
2013. Right.
Well, they did in 2002, then they did in 2009, then they did in 2012.
Yes.
11, yeah, 11.
A lot of interest in the data issues, she said, especially the transparency and informed consumer choice.
Only it's for money.
Pardon?
You need money if they want us to merge or something.
So, okay, could you go back for a minute? And then somebody had asked a question from the that was participating in the webinar, if that meant the data was about what we needed to do as a state to get the word out or to show Congress the value of the program. But what she was really talking about is, and what she thinks is Congress is interested in, is its data and transparency from the standpoint of I'm a student or I'm a provider and or a case manager, where's the best place? Where am I going to get the best bang for my
I think of
buck?
consumer information that we were supposed to do and we had Title
Oh,
I
yeah,
back
I
in
was
2000.
just thinking about
whatever.
that.
Right.
But it's also ATA, which is the big kahuna money,
Yep.
is transparency, at least on both sides of the aisle, transparency and student aid reform are the two
Yeah.
biggies.
Yep.
Well, transparency means, you know, like when we're just doing it from the little trickle of money we have in Title I, for transparency we can't do it. But if everybody to be eligible for student grants and loans has to do it,
Right.
big deal.
Well, and that's what she was saying. She said, you know, and I think for us,
It makes sense.
well, it does make sense. It'll be a shift for,
I think we should be tracking the HEA more because I was told that's because of the student loan, big problems right now. I was told that was coming up first.
Okay.
Yeah, so why not just focus on what student loan should be for the 2 years in the community
And
college
for part-time workers who
Yeah.
can't get
Right,
Pell Grants and
exactly.
loans,
Then
and
throw
so
them in.
then it comes back
Right.
on us, and if we cut
Backfill,
the TA
yeah.
money down to nothing,
Yeah.
we're going to have...
Well, and they
we're
put in
using
all-
money for students we shouldn't be paying for right now.
Well, but look what they've done to Powell, though. They've massacred it.
Well, I'm just saying, it's just.
So,
No, but I'm saying is
Yeah.
that the ATA is
Yeah.
the mothership.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
when you look at the funding streams, the ATA is the mothership, and we're like little dribbles of money. And whatever happens to
Yeah.
the mothership is going to have offsetting costs onto us.
Right.
yeah, and
Yep.
I've got the insurance. They're looking every day
But it's
for
silly that we're
anything
not
on
using
ETA.
help, I mean, that's.
well, then I ought to be more in touch with you and probably be passing stuff to you.
Yes.
And also,
Okay.
there's many more proposals now to open up student loans and grants and non-credit programming. Well, guess what? That's what we fund in our ITA.
Then they're gonna say we're duplicating funding.
I'm saying that all that, how that works, that's going to affect us.
Okay, so-
Well, yeah, because if you're giving a student loan to non-credit, what the accountability
okay,
can be
so
very
then she
different. And
We kind of talked about what it means. It's very important for us to continue to educate Congress.
Right.
And especially getting to the new members because they've got some huge decisions to make pretty quickly. Go to the next screen. And then, of course, you know, what can we do? Which is, you know, we're doing this in our own way right here through this task force. So we're getting out and reaching out to members of Congress. So that was it. So
Why not
that's
the
our-
campaign to invest in America's workforce focus on
That is a website that they have that we get information from,
Oh.
that things like this webinar and stuff going on like that.
Can you email this to our group?
Yeah, I absolutely.
And then the whole slides, email the group too.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So there you go.
Okay, we have any questions to that, we'll move on. I'd like to get this thing wrapped up.
That's what I'm going to ask.
Did anybody want to talk about WIA Title I or anything else?
No, there's not really anything to report that I have.
No, we just have we're done with our recommendations for Title I.
Sure.
Right.
Adult ed and Perkins is basically,
I'm not prepared, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Wait, can you
But I
share
will.
your guys' efforts for the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And
I
then I'll
appreciate
send out
Yes,
we
I will.
did a mock-up of what we need for flexibility in Title I, we'll send that to you. And that-
Jay, maybe you can put us up to date,
for
next meeting, definitely Wagner Pfizer and
Sure, I
everything.
mean, we sent something to Tree, about Title III, was carried up.
Very good.
I just,
Yeah, we need some minor changes in, that they would keep funding it.
And if we can, let's try to make sure that we have all legislative updates before the meeting from now on, so that we can share with all members.
Yeah, I didn't
Would it be possible to
understand.
get somebody who's tracking ATA in our state, one of the agencies, maybe at the higher board, to help on updating our ATA?
Know somebody?
We'll find
Well, we use
They
the
call me and
current
I-
legislation because there's so many bills.
Yeah, we use the current legislation, and what we did is,
Oh, if you want to do that, yeah, we.
Yeah, we
yeah,
can
we
do
did,
that.
and we
Okay.
said,
And then we could put them all together and then.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay.
did you,
I mean,
have we
we-
sent it to him yet? We can send it, here's what we did.
No,
We-
yeah, we got the chart that you guys made, I think.
Well, we've done a different chart since then, though, I think.
Okay.
We done we did a chart that actually said, here's what section 101 says, which is not the right section. Here's what section 101 says. Like, I'll give you the first example off my head is the use definition. Here's what it says currently. Here's what we think it needs to say,
So
and
you
why.
just, you marked up the actual legislation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise they're too.
We certainly can do that if that's the preferred format. I think it makes sense because there were so many bills in the last
Right.
Well, I have to agree with Bob, though. The HEA is very important, so we have somebody on our board, or somebody can we get it?
It can either be done by the community college board or the higher board.
I don't care, the higher board or
Yeah,
whoever.
let me go back and just find out.
Yeah.
I'll find out. I can call people over at IBAG too.
Well, the one thing I have heard is
But
there's
with
definitely going to be
debt
the $1 trillion debt that student loans have and everything else is going to be the first and foremost are going to be addressed.
And
It's all going to be tied together with that.
No, I know, I understand.
And that's what I'm trying to
just
say, it's the
saying-
whole spectrum of it and everything else and stuff, and it's all going to be conversation, so it's all going to be affecting workforce development and training and everything else and stuff that goes along. So we got to make sure we have them at the table on this thing, so.
Okay.
And we get that
I'll do
done,
that.
I appreciate it, if it's somebody from higher education, I don't care who it is and stuff.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, this is the final thing in your packet, and Mark will pull it up. We thought this would be easier, because I know how busy everybody is. So we just laid out a timetable of the meetings for the rest of the year. And we're thinking that at a minimum, when we have the IWIB meetings, since most of the folks here also sit on the IWIB, those could be our in-person meetings, and then the meetings in between we can do like this webinar format. We can always have webinar available, but, so then you guys can get these on your schedule for the year.
So kind of in conclusion today, the one thing we have is for the next meeting is March 14th, but more importantly, Lisa will have a format set up for you, everyone, to make sure we get some answers back by February 15th. That gives us a month to kind of review and go along, get some models, get some objectives, what we want to get through that process. And before the next meeting, maybe we can have some things and we'll be working. So don't be surprised if we get emails contacting different individuals. I'll be working on the private side to kind of make sure we get this, like I said, I'm going to realize the importance of them, that they're going to be the driving force on this. So it's going to be their involvement. It's not us. And that's the thing I'm trying to make sure they're doing. They're not doing it. Jay?
It's one other thing. What's the deadline on the legislative? When do you want our markup by?
I think it would,
Next couple weeks?
Yeah.
would it be nice to bring them to Washington or not?
Oh, yeah.
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 So I'll try and get it to you in the next 10 days,
Yeah.
and we can make sure we're all on the same page. But I
That's fine. Yeah, just share with the committee.
College part of it, can you do that?
Well, I'll go back, I'll go back and it's a biggie.
Yeah.
Let's just start,
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the big issues, I guess.
Yeah,
And then we
okay.
can get more into the nitty gritty if there's, subsequent
Right,
things that move.
Yeah, and Lisa, will you send Jay the? I sent that.
Okay, so we'll get that done.
Jay.
All right.
Anyway, I think it was very important that we had this meeting because we kind of basically kind of did a review of what we've done in the last year, but more importantly, we refocused on what the task is going to be done and how we address it. At least we have a plan now. And then, of course, with Bob Sheep's help, we're always on the right track, and everything else and stuff. And I want to thank Bob for his help and involvement, but more importantly, the partners that we have sitting around our table and those on the webinar today. And like I said, that I appreciate everybody's involvement, and we'll continue with this. And we think it's important because let me just say this, and I mean this very sincerely. One thing I did get out of Durbin, kind of leave you as the last thought. He's looking for a model. And who better yet to carry a model for us than it would be, Senator Durbin, to what we can do in Illinois. So we need to get our act together and basically come up with some kind of a model for him. And that's what I want to address, okay?
I hate to bring this up, but at one point, do we really need to look at that report that addresses all the duplication and,
Oh, the GAO report?
yeah,
Yeah, we should.
I mean, should we do that? I mean, because I think there's a lot of
That's coming down.
possible information in that we could start with.
Well,
and then-
right, and let me go back, because I think when Andrew was here, he did some stuff for us
Yeah.
on it. So let me go
I think-
back.
I think-
Yeah, I think the most important thing is read their response to the agency's critique of their thing.
Yes.
And they use some very specific words that duplication does not mean, they define what they mean by that. I think we need to look back at how they responded, and I think that was but also, they did it from the standpoint of services directed toward the individual client, not toward the business client.
Right.
Their entire report had none of that in there, and I think we ought to just flip their focus.
Well, the bottom line is, I'm going to leave that to you guys and your committee.
Yeah, no, but we need to look at it.
As the agency, that's your responsibility for my employer-driven thing. That's what he's going to look at. He's going examples and models to make sure they work. And I have to keep this thing separate. It is. You guys are going to have to do that as your own task and your own force. But as far as the subcommittee and everything else and stuff, it's going to do. And that's what we're going to have to make sure we do.
Okay.
And the policy recommendations come from that committee. You guys figure out from that part.
So Trees, do you want to have that circulated, Trees? You want to have that circulated to people, the GAO thing?
I think we need to, I mean,
Yeah.
and you're right,
I think I
Tom,
got it.
separate, but he did bring that up several times.
I know, many times, the main thing is though, he don't want to hear all the bullshit associated
Right.
with it. We guys are going to take care of it and get to that. We got to make sure, we got to give him something he can grasp on. That's my problem. We got to grasp on.
Because this is
And then we can say example, better yet, if you do that example, to say, we're going to get rid of the duplication by doing this, we're going to do that. That's how you do it.
Okay, all right, so we'll look at that and we'll circulate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I agree, separate, Tom, you guys don't have to deal with that.
Thank you. Thank you very
All
much.
right, thanks, everyone. See you.
I know.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
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 And he's sleeping in bed.
He's going.
On the duplicate